Hello and welcome, Albion community, to another development recap. My name is Robin Henkys, Game Director of Albion Online, and today I want to talk to you about the Faye update, which we launched 2 weeks ago and which was generally quite well received by you. However, you had several points of feedback and questions regarding the changes of the update, so we thought we'd take the time and talk to you about that today. So, one of the big discussed points of the update were the guard towers. The guard towers are a feature that was added to city entrances and locations where the safe zone meets a PvP zone, and they're generally a boost to the strength of the previous guards. We've always had guards at these locations, but these guards were quite ineffectual in many situations. And a lot of you have asked why in a full loot PvP game that's supposed to be a sandbox, we have these guard towers. Well, our answer to that is we have a lot of measures to prevent gate camping. Gate camping is generally not, while it's a supported sandbox activity, it's something you can do. It's not the form of PvP that we want to have as standard in Albion Online. Gate camping is a lot of sitting around and waiting for victims who cannot really do anything to prevent the situation that they're getting into. And as I said, while to a degree this should be supported, we felt that it was just too risk-free the way it was happening, because even if you were able to do something about your situation as a player, which was to gather support, gather players around you, to engage the people who were camping on the other side of the exit, these people could just flee into the city and basically have zero risk to their PvP activity. And as you know, we're all about risk versus reward. Therefore, we introduced the guard towers, which are now, you can't really trick them with numbers, and with the outlaw debuff, you cannot enter the city a few minutes after attacking other players. And this adds a level of risk to your activity, because once you engage someone, you have to know that you cannot retreat into the safety of the city for a while. Now, you need to know that we are obviously looking into the balance of this, so we will see if the penalty applied to attackers is fair and creates the amount of risk that we want. But we generally believe this is a measure we need to take to ensure that gate camping is not a risk-free activity. The next feature that we introduced, and that was a big change in Faye, were the persistent mounts. The persistent mounts are basically is a change that makes your mount stand next to you in the world once you get off the mount, and which applies the load bonus from your mount in a decent sized area around your character. This change was primarily introduced to support gatherers who are using their mounts to collect large amount of resources in the world and then get back after a long trip to the city. And it was really frustrating to get off the mount and then be slowed significantly, crawl to the resource you wanted to harvest it, and then get back on the mount. The persistent mounts make this experience much more smooth and generally make mount handling a smoother experience in our opinion. We did another change to the mounts while we were at it, and that was that the mounts now have their own HP bar. They always had one previously, but it was going down as your character health was going down as well. Now the mount health goes down before your character health goes down. And that was important to us, because this allows people who get caught on a mount, get attacked, to fight back once they've been dismounted at full strength. Previously, you had to make a hard choice. You couldn't really make that choice, because if you were dismounting, you would get the dismount penalty. The dismount penalty is in to prevent mounted attackers from gaining too much of an advantage on dismounted players. So the dismount penalty is that you cannot use your abilities after dismounting from the mount. So if you were attacked, you had to make the choice of dismounting but not having your abilities available, or waiting for your mount to get knocked out, but by that time you would have been at half HP and you wouldn't have stood a chance in a fight afterwards. Now you can wait for your mount to get killed, you can get dismounted, and then you can fight back at full HP. Now obviously this change had some impact on the balance of fight or flight, as we call it, the ability to attack someone effectively on a mount and engage them. And this is actually intended. We felt it was a little bit too easy to dismount someone and attack them. This should not typically be possible by an individual player unless you're playing extremely well, or you are extremely well prepared for the situation, or you outgear your opponent. In general, we need to create a good balance to allow non-PvP players who are traversing the world to gather resources, to engage with the game somewhat, well, not with a reasonable risk. If as soon as I encounter a player, I'm pretty much dead, then that's not a reasonable risk. A reasonable risk needs to be if I make a mistake, or if they do exceptionally well. But it can't be that as soon as you see a player and you have the right gear, you can always take them down. Because then we will not have non-PvP players traversing the world. We will not have people gathering resources. These players will not take these risks. So the change to mounts is part of an ongoing process to balance fight or flight for the interests of the ganking PvP community and the gathering community. And you can be sure that this is not the last change to that. We will always keep an eye on this very, very crucial piece of balancing in Albion, because in the end this defines how your encounters in the open world will end. And we will now observe this change and see what measures will be taken in the future. The next topic that was in Faye that merited a lot of discussion were the essences. The essences are part of an ongoing effort that I mentioned before, that we want to make PvE in Albion more rewarding. But not only that, we want to make it more significant as well. We want to have make PvE a centerpiece of the economy, because it's an activity that many players like to engage in and that we feel needs to be fundamental in the game. The essences are an effort to introduce a new type of loot to the game. They're not the most exciting type of loot, but they do tie the game or tie the PvE to the economy quite well. Essences are needed in the refining of enchanted resources. And we've balanced it in such a way that there should be an oversupply of these. Obviously, we're observing the feature. In the first couple of days, prices for essences were extremely high. This is completely to be expected when a new ware is introduced into the markets, and it's obviously rare initially. But prices have since settled, and we're actually quite happy with how the economics are working out. Again, we will keep observing this. But this is a first step of making sure that PvE takes a more central role and actually a more important role in the Albion economy. And this should mean that guilds are no longer forced to tell all their members to go out and gather resources. Instead, they can tell some of their members to go and gather resources, and then the other part of their members to go into dungeons and collect essences. Basically, dungeons become part of the strategy of playing Albion Online as a guild. Along with that, it's probably worth talking about the changes to Fragments. In this update, we've renamed Fragments to Runes, Souls, and Relics, as they were in previous betas. Not much has changed apart from that, but this is part of an upcoming change. With the next major update, we will introduce Enchanting with Fragments. Enchanting with Fragments will allow players who are not interested in the artifacts that you can normally get from Fragments because their build doesn't require artifacts or they already have an artifact. It will allow them to use these fragments for a secondary purpose, which is enchanting existing items. So basically you can increase the enchantment level of an item by using fragments. We think this is quite a good and interesting way to give fragments a secondary purpose. They will basically mean that fragments are always valuable, and our balancing goal is such that obviously finding rare resources, finding enchanted resources in the world is always more valuable than farming fragments. But if you do PvE and you collect these fragments on the side, they're an additional very nice reward that can help you to upgrade your equipment over time. So you can look forward to that change in an upcoming later update. The final topic I want to talk to you about today is the Royal GVG. We reintroduced GVG on the Royal Continent with Faye, and that was due to this request being out there. A lot of you requested this feature to return to Albion because you liked having GVG in yellow zones, you liked having GVG in red zones. And well, we answered. We put the GVG back on the Royal Continent, and we brought it back with watchtowers. Why did we do that? Why didn't we bring back territories? Well, territories on the Royal Continent would mean that you have a safe retreat for guilds, right? It would basically undermine the efforts of the reputation system, because the penalty of attacking players on the Royal Continent is that you get banished from the cities. If you have a safe retreat to the territories, this would completely undermine the efforts of that system. Therefore, we introduced the watchtowers, which are places that you can retreat to, but you can't really live out of them. You can't craft there and do these sort of things. So, to make the watchtowers worthwhile, we introduced the resource bonuses on their grounds. So you're getting more resources if you harvest resources that are spawning right on the watchtower territory. We did make an effort to calculate how much food goes into a watchtower and how much reward you're gaining from the resources. But how much you're getting out of a watchtower obviously depends on your own harvesting rate. Are you catching all the respawns? And also on the market prices for food and the effort of producing food. So based on your feedback, we will be revisiting this balancing and make sure that owning a watchtower on the Royal Continent is a valuable activity and is something very desired. In addition, we think that a centerpiece of the Royal GVG should be the city fights. In the end, the entire GVG network on the Royal Continent aims to be a strategic pathway to the cities. In the end, fighting over these cities should be what fighting on the Royal Continent is all about. And I think we still have a long way to go there. While the cities already do provide a lot of silver and such, there's several problems with it. It's not that visible yet. And the effort of fighting over these cities and supplying them is probably higher than the cost, higher than the gains you can currently make. You can rest assured that is something we'll be looking into. It's not easy to change, but it is something that will become very important to us and that you can look forward to in future updates that will improve it. I actually personally think that the city fights have the potential to become a centerpiece of Albion PvP, but unfortunately what we want to do and what we can do with the resources we have is not always possible to make happen right when we want to. So look forward to changes to the cities and further improvements to the Royal GVG in the future. For now, this has been my recap and our view on the changes that have happened in Faye. Keep your feedback coming, it's very helpful. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you again in the next development recap.